In Judge Judy's courtroom, an entitled Karen stood up and screamed that the famous judge was showing favoritism, claiming the entire show was rigged against her. But what Karen didn't know was that the bailiff had been secretly recording her lies for weeks, and the evidence he was about to reveal would expose the most shocking courtroom scam in television history. The cameras captured every second as Karen's world crumbled in front of millions, and what happened next left even Judge Judy speechless. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The tension in that courtroom was suffocating. Karen, dressed in her finest outfit, thought she had outsmarted everyone. She had rehearsed her victim story, prepared her crocodile tears, and was ready to manipulate America's toughest judge. Her confidence was unshakable as she sat there, believing her elaborate lies would fool the woman who had seen it all. But the bailiff, standing silently in the corner, held evidence so damning that it would destroy Karen's entire facade in seconds. Judge Judy, with her piercing eyes and decades of experience, sensed something was wrong from the moment Karen walked in. The way Karen carried herself, the way she spoke, the way she looked around the courtroom like she owned it, all triggered Judge Judy's instincts. But even the sharpest legal mind in television couldn't have predicted the bombshell that was about to explode. The bailiff stepped forward, his hand reaching for a folder that contained the most devastating evidence ever presented in that courtroom. What started as a simple case about property damage was about to become the most watched courtroom takedown in internet history. Karen's accusation of favoritism was just the beginning. The real story, the one that would leave viewers screaming at their screens, was hidden in that folder. And when the bailiff finally spoke, Karen's face went from smug confidence to absolute terror in the span of 3 words. If you love seeing entitled people get completely destroyed by their own lies, smash that like button right now, because what happens next will blow your mind and restore your faith in justice. The studio lights blazed down on Judge Judy's iconic courtroom as millions of viewers across America settled in for what they thought would be another routine case. The familiar wooden bench gleamed under the harsh television lighting, and the American flag stood proudly in the corner, a symbol of the justice that was about to unfold. Camera operators adjusted their lenses, sound technicians checked their equipment, and producers whispered excitedly in the control room. None of them realized they were about to witness television history. Judge Judy Sheindlin sat behind her bench like a fortress of justice, her silver hair perfectly styled, her reading glasses perched on her nose, and her famous no-nonsense expression already set in stone. For over 2 decades she had seen every type of liar, every kind of scammer, and every variety of entitled person who thought they could outsmart her. Her fingers drummed impatiently on the wooden surface as she reviewed the case file, her keen eyes scanning the details with the precision of a surgeon. Something about this case felt different, heavier, more charged with potential drama than usual. The bailiff, Petrie Hawkins Bird, stood at his post with military precision, his uniform crisp, his posture perfect, his eyes alert and scanning the room like a guardian protecting sacred ground. For years he had been Judge Judy's silent sentinel, the man who maintained order when chaos threatened to explode. But today his role would expand far beyond keeping the peace. Hidden in his jacket pocket was a manila folder that would change everything, evidence so explosive that even he felt the weight of its contents pressing against his chest. Then there was Karen, the defendant, who strutted into the courtroom like she was walking into her own personal victory parade. Her blonde hair was styled in the classic, "I want to speak to the manager" cut. Her designer handbag swung from her arm with exaggerated importance, and her high heels clicked against the floor, with the rhythm of someone who believed the world owed her everything. She wore a bright pink blazer that screamed for attention, her makeup applied so thickly it looked like war paint, and her jewelry sparkled under the studio lights like armor made of entitlement. Karen's eyes surveyed the courtroom with the calculating gaze of a predator sizing up her prey. She had done her homework, watched countless episodes, and was convinced she had figured out Judge Judy's weaknesses. Her lips curved into a barely concealed smirk as she took her place at the defendant's podium, her manicured fingers gripping the wooden rail like she was claiming territory. She adjusted her blazer, fluffed her hair, and shot a dismissive glance at the plaintiff standing across from her. The plaintiff, a soft-spoken elderly man named Harold, stood nervously at his podium, clutching a worn manila folder containing what he believed was his only hope for justice. His weathered hands shook slightly as he organized his papers, his kind eyes reflecting the stress of months of dealing with Karen's harassment and destruction. Harold had worked his entire life, saved every penny, and now found himself in this surreal television courtroom, praying that Judge Judy would see through Karen's lies and manipulation. The audience, packed with curious onlookers and court show enthusiasts, buzzed with anticipation. They had no idea they were about to witness the most spectacular courtroom meltdown ever captured on camera. Some leaned forward in their seats, sensing the electricity in the air. Others whispered among themselves, trying to guess which side would emerge victorious. All of them were completely unprepared for the nuclear explosion of drama that was about to detonate. The production crew moved with practiced efficiency, but there was something different about today's energy. Camera operators found themselves instinctively adjusting for closer shots, sensing that something monumental was brewing. The director's voice crackled through headsets, reminding everyone to be ready for anything. Even the court reporter's fingers hovered over her keyboard with unusual tension, as if she could feel the weight of the words she was about to transcribe. Karen checked her reflection in her phone's camera one last time, practicing her innocent victim expression. She had rehearsed her story so many times that she almost believed it herself. Her plan was foolproof, her lies were perfectly crafted, and her confidence was unshakable. She was about to take on America's toughest judge and win, or so she thought. The bailiff's hand unconsciously touched the folder in his pocket, feeling the weight of the evidence that would soon destroy Karen's entire world. His years of experience had taught him to read people, and everything about Karen screamed deception. But what he had discovered about her went far beyond simple lies. It was a pattern of calculated manipulation that would shock even Judge Judy's hardened sensibilities. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the cameras were rolling. What happened next would leave the entire courtroom and millions of viewers absolutely stunned. Judge Judy's gavel struck the bench with the sharp crack of authority that had become her trademark, and the courtroom fell into immediate silence. Her voice cut through the air like a blade as she announced the case. We're here today because the plaintiff, Harold Mitchell, claims that the defendant, Karen Stevenson, deliberately destroyed his vintage car and then refused to pay for the damages. Let's start with you, Mr. Mitchell. Harold stepped closer to his microphone, his voice trembling slightly as he began to tell his story. He explained how Karen had been his neighbor for 3 years, how tensions had escalated over a property line dispute, and how one morning he had awakened to find his beloved 1967 Mustang, his pride and joy that he had spent decades restoring, completely vandalized. The paint was scratched with deep gouges, the windows were shattered, and the interior was destroyed beyond repair. His voice broke as he described finding his car, the one thing that connected him to his late father's memory, ruined in his own driveway. Judge Judy listened intently, her eyes narrowing as Harold presented his evidence. Photos of the destroyed vehicle filled the courtroom monitors, showing the extent of the deliberate damage. Harold had security camera footage from across the street that showed a figure approaching his car in the middle of the night, but the image was too grainy to definitively identify the person. However, he had other evidence that pointed directly to Karen, including witness statements from other neighbors who had heard her threatening to teach him a lesson just days before the incident. Karen stood at her podium with a look of practiced innocence, occasionally shaking her head in disbelief as if she couldn't fathom how anyone could accuse her of such a thing. Her performance was Oscar-worthy, complete with perfectly timed gasps of shock and wounded expressions that she had clearly rehearsed in front of a mirror. She clutched her designer purse tighter as the evidence mounted, but her confidence never wavered. When Judge Judy turned her attention to Karen, the defendant immediately launched into her prepared defense. Her voice dripped with false sincerity as she claimed she was being framed by a vindictive neighbor who couldn't accept that she was a successful businesswoman. Karen insisted that Harold had always been jealous of her lifestyle, her beautiful home, and her expensive cars. She painted herself as the victim of a bitter old man who was trying to destroy her reputation and steal her hard-earned money. Karen's story was elaborate and detailed, almost too perfect in its construction. She claimed to have been out of town during the time of the vandalism, visiting her sick mother in another state. She even produced what appeared to be hospital records and hotel receipts to support her alibi. Her presentation was smooth, confident, and convincing to anyone who didn't know what Judge Judy and the bailiff already suspected. But Judge Judy's experienced eyes caught the subtle tells that betrayed Karen's deception. The way Karen's hands fidgeted when she spoke about her alibi, the slight pause before each major claim, and the overly rehearsed quality of her emotional responses all triggered Judge Judy's finely tuned instincts for detecting lies. The judge had seen thousands of liars over her career, and Karen was displaying every classic sign of someone desperately trying to sell a fabricated story. The bailiff watched from his position, his trained eye noting Karen's body language and the inconsistencies in her timeline. As someone who had worked in law enforcement before joining Judge Judy's team, he could read people like open books. Karen's performance might have fooled some people, but it wasn't fooling him. His hand moved unconsciously toward the folder in his pocket, the evidence that would soon tear apart Karen's carefully constructed lies. As Karen continued her defense, Her true personality began to seep through the cracks of her victim facade. Small hints of entitlement crept into her voice when she spoke about Harold. Subtle suggestions that he was beneath her social status and unworthy of her consideration. She made passive-aggressive comments about his rundown property and his obsession with that old car, revealing the contempt she had been trying to hide. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed, watching Karen with the intensity of a hawk studying its prey. The temperature in the courtroom seemed to rise as the tension built, and everyone could sense that something explosive was about to happen. The courtroom tension reached a breaking point when Judge Judy leaned forward and delivered her signature. Piercing stare directly at Karen. "Ms. Stevenson, your story has more holes than Swiss cheese, and frankly, I don't believe a word you're saying." Her voice carried the weight of decades of courtroom experience, and her eyes blazed with the fire of someone who had caught a liar red-handed. Karen's carefully constructed mask of innocence began to crack. Her face flushed red as she realized her performance wasn't working on America's toughest judge. For someone accustomed to manipulating her way out of every situation, facing Judge Judy's unwavering scrutiny was like being stripped naked in front of millions. Her hands clenched into fists as she struggled to maintain her composure. "Your Honor, with all due respect," Karen's voice began to rise, the sweet facade melting away like sugar in rain. "You're not even listening to my side of the story. You made up your mind the moment I walked in here." Her tone shifted from submissive to aggressive, revealing the entitled monster that had been lurking beneath her polite exterior. Judge Judy's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. In her decades on the bench, few defendants had the audacity to challenge her directly. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice dangerously low, a warning sign that anyone familiar with her show would recognize as the calm before the storm. But Karen was too blinded by rage and desperation to heed the warning. She stepped closer to the microphone, her voice rising to a near shout. "This whole show is rigged. You're showing complete favoritism toward him because he's playing the victim card. You don't care about the truth, you just want good television?" The words exploded from her mouth like venom, each accusation more outrageous than the last. The courtroom erupted in gasps. The audience members looked at each other in shock, unable to believe they were witnessing someone accuse Judge Judy of corruption on live television. The camera operator zoomed in on Karen's face, capturing every detail of her meltdown as it unfolded in real time. Karen wasn't finished. Her entitlement reached nuclear levels as she pointed an accusatory finger at Judge Judy. "You've been against me from the start. This isn't justice, this is a witch hunt. I'm a successful businesswoman, and you can't stand that I won't be intimidated by your reputation." Her voice cracked with hysteria as she completely abandoned any pretense of respect or decorum. Judge Judy sat in stunned silence for a moment, her mouth slightly agape. In all her years of dealing with difficult defendants, she had never encountered such blatant disrespect and outrageous accusations. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, everyone waiting to see how the legendary judge would respond to this unprecedented attack. But before Judge Judy could unleash her famous wrath, the bailiff stepped forward from his post. His movement was subtle but purposeful, and the folder in his hand caught the light as he approached the bench. Karen, still fuming from her outburst, didn't notice that her world was about to completely collapse. The bailiff stepped forward with the calm authority of someone who held a nuclear weapon in his hands. His voice cut through the stunned silence like a knife through butter. "Your Honor, if I may interrupt," he said, his tone respectful but urgent. "I have evidence that Ms. Stevenson needs to see." Karen's head snapped toward the bailiff, her eyes wide with confusion and growing panic. She had been so focused on attacking Judge Judy that she hadn't noticed the bailiff moving into position. Her mouth opened as if to object, but no words came out as she watched him approach the bench with a thick manila folder. "Ms. Stevenson," the bailiff said, turning to face her directly, his voice steady and professional. "You claimed you were out of town visiting your sick mother during the time of the vandalism, correct?" Karen nodded frantically, her confidence beginning to crumble as she sensed the trap closing around her. The bailiff opened the folder with deliberate precision, pulling out a stack of photographs that made Karen's face go completely white. "These are security camera images from the gas station, 2 blocks from Mr. Mitchell's house, taken at 2:47 a.m. on the night of the vandalism. That's your car, Ms. Stevenson, and that's you getting out of it." The courtroom exploded in gasps as the images appeared on the monitors. The photos were crystal clear, showing Karen in the same pink blazer she was wearing in court, her distinctive blonde hair unmistakable even in the dim lighting. Her license plate was clearly visible, and the timestamp proved she was lying about her whereabouts. But the bailiff wasn't finished. He pulled out another set of documents that made Karen stumble backward. "We also have records showing that the hospital you claimed to visit your mother at has no record of any patient with her name during that entire week." The hotel receipts you provided? They're forgeries and poorly done ones at that. Karen's legs nearly gave out as the evidence mounted. Her mouth moved wordlessly as she tried to process how completely her lies had been exposed. Judge Judy leaned forward, her eyes blazing with a mixture of satisfaction and fury at being lied to so boldly. The final blow came when the bailiff revealed witness statements from 3 different neighbors who had seen Karen vandalizing the car and had been too afraid to come forward until now. They were worried about retaliation, the bailiff explained. But they couldn't let an innocent man be blamed for what you did. Karen's world imploded in that moment, her lies shattered beyond repair, her reputation destroyed on live television. Judge Judy's eyes blazed with a fire that could have melted steel as she stared down at Karen, who now stood trembling at the defendant's podium like a cornered animal. The legendary judge had dealt with thousands of liars over her career, but Karen's brazen attempt to manipulate the court and accuse her of favoritism had crossed a line that should never be crossed. Ms. Stevenson, Judge Judy began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. In my 30 years on the bench, I have rarely encountered such a calculated, deliberate, and disgusting display of perjury and manipulation. Each word hit Karen like a physical blow, and her knees visibly buckled as the full force of Judge Judy's wrath descended upon her. Karen tried desperately to interrupt, her voice cracking with panic. Your Honor, I can explain, those photos could be... But Judge Judy's hand shot up like a stop sign, silencing her immediately. You will not speak unless I tell you to speak. Judge Judy roared, her voice echoing through the courtroom with thunderous authority. You came into my courtroom, lied under oath, forged documents, and had the unmitigated gall to accuse me of favoritism, when your own evidence proved you were a criminal. The courtroom was so silent that every breath could be heard. Camera operators zoomed in on Karen's face, capturing every detail of her complete breakdown as Judge Judy continued her devastating verbal assault. You destroyed an elderly man's prized possession out of pure spite and malice, then came here thinking you could fool me with your pathetic performance. Judge Judy continued, her voice rising to a crescendo. Well, congratulations, Ms. Stevenson. You've just earned yourself the maximum judgment possible. Judge Judy's gavel struck the bench with the finality of a gunshot. I'm ordering you to pay Mr. Mitchell $15,000 for the destruction of his vehicle, plus $5,000 in punitive damages for your lies and contempt of this court. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Karen's face went ashen as the reality of her situation crashed down on her. She had come into the courtroom expecting an easy victory, and instead found herself facing financial ruin and potential jail time. Her legs gave out and she grabbed the podium for support, as the audience erupted in thunderous applause. Harold wiped tears of relief from his eyes as justice was finally served, while Karen stood frozen in shock, her world completely destroyed by her own arrogance and lies. Within hours of the episode airing, Karen's courtroom meltdown exploded across the internet like digital wildfire. The clip of her accusing Judge Judy of favoritism, followed by the bailiff's devastating evidence reveal, racked up over 10 million views in the first day alone. Social media platforms crashed under the weight of shares, comments, and reactions as the world witnessed the most spectacular courtroom takedown in television history. Can you believe Karen thought she could outsmart Judge Judy and get away with it? If this bailiff just became your personal hero, smash that subscribe button because we're about to show you how the internet reacted to this legendary moment. Twitter exploded with hashtags like Nah Karen vs Judge Judy, Bailiff Hero, and Osh Justice served trending worldwide within hours. TikTok users created thousands of reaction videos, with teenagers gasping in disbelief and grandparents cheering from their living rooms. The moment when Karen's face went white after seeing the security footage became an instant meme, shared millions of times with captions like, "When your lies catch up to you and reality check incoming." News outlets from CNN to Fox News covered the story, calling it the most dramatic courtroom moment since the O.J. Simpson trial. Legal experts praised the bailiff's investigative work, with one former prosecutor stating, "This is exactly why perjury laws exist." Karen thought she could commit a crime and then lie her way out of it on national television. Facebook groups dedicated to Judge Judy fans gained hundreds of thousands of new members overnight, all sharing their favorite moments from Karen's destruction. Comments poured in from around the world, with viewers from Australia, the United Kingdom, and Canada expressing their amazement at the bailiff's perfect timing and Judge Judy's righteous fury. The real impact went far beyond entertainment. Harold received thousands of supportive messages and donations from strangers who were moved by his story. A crowdfunding campaign to help him restore another classic car raised over $50,000 in just 1 week. Meanwhile, Karen became the poster child for entitled behavior, her name synonymous with lying and manipulation. Law enforcement officials revealed that Karen's case inspired them to investigate similar patterns of neighbor harassment, leading to several arrests across the country. Judge Judy herself later said in interviews that Karen's case reminded her why she loved bringing justice to ordinary people who couldn't get it anywhere else. The episode became the most watched in Judge Judy's history, proving that America still hungered for truth, justice, and watching entitled people face the consequences of their actions. This bailiff didn't just expose Karen's lies, he restored faith in justice itself. If this epic takedown made your day, smash that like button, subscribe for more incredible courtroom karma, and comment below what you would have said to Karen after she got exposed. Join our membership for exclusive behind-the-scenes content and early access to the most shocking courtroom moments. Let's celebrate real heroes like this bailiff together.